Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
Well, welcome to Monday, the 9th of December, 2022 out here at Giga Texas. And it's a beautiful day to be flying today, and I got a chance to see quite a bit of things. For the intro, let's talk about a few key items that I want to highlight before we get into the video. First, as you can see here, we spent some time on the west side of the highway, taking a look first at the north end where the material staging areas are continuing to grow and get more and more steel materials and other equipment. And also, as you can see here, we take a look at the south end material staging and also that east warehouse on wheels expansion lot, and that continues to change and grow. And then finally, as you can see on these images, there's more earthwork that's taking place on the western side of this area. They're taking a lot of the dirt and they're moving it over to that large clearing area, as you can see here. And they're not only applying the gravel mix on top, which is a great sign, which means that they're getting close to the next phase of construction, but also it looks like they're putting in a few water detention ponds on the west side and possibly one on the south side as well. So a lot of activity across the highway. The next thing that I want to talk about, as you can see on all of these images, there's quite a bit of activity with production of Model Ys today. On the south end, there were several rows of cars that had been moved out of the south end of the factory, put up in lines to drive over to the east side, while a bunch more are stored in the temporary lots in this area as well, in addition to getting supercharging. Speaking of which, as you can see on this image on the east side smaller parking lot, it looks like at least some of the superchargers are operational. As you can see, many Model Ys hooked up to them. And you can also see more Model Ys in this temporary staging location, which is where they do the testing and preparation before moving them over to the new car staging and transportation lot. And speaking of which, as you can see here, a lot of activity over there, quite a few trucks that were loading up Model Ys, more arriving, and the lot looked pretty full compared to what we've seen in the past. So it looks to me like not only is production at full speed, but the ramp is continuing to increase. The last area that I want to talk about is over here. As you can see by the battery cathode plant, that steel structure is really moving along quickly. Now they even have some of the roof beams installed, and they're working more on the western side, where it looks like those truss-like items are actually some reinforced columns, probably for a very heavy lift bridge crane that'll be going in this area. It kind of makes sense because this is over that section that has that highly densely packed piers that were installed, and the footing work is continuing with concrete work today. And actually, there's one other thing I want to show you of interest, and I've noticed this before, but today I tried to get a closer view. As you can see by this image here, this is on the very far east side, and this is where they are ripping up and taking apart a bunch of these crates for recycling. Now, these crates appear to be crates that have battery packs in them, but not structural packs. And I think they're actually what they use to ship out some of the 2170 battery packs to Giga Texas from Giga Nevada. And you can see there's quite a few of these crates. It's an interesting operation that they're doing, and I'm not sure why they're not just using the crates again by sending them back. Maybe it's not as efficient. But otherwise, those are some of the areas that I wanted to talk about today. A lot more to see on this really beautiful Monday. As always, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Take care.
My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. This morning we start off the flight on the west side of the highway on the north end near Tesla Road. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, this is where many of the trucks and also transport vehicles queue up waiting for their allotted time to go onto the site. And you can see there are some interesting deliveries, some center dump trucks with some material being brought from off-site, and of course the transport trucks. You can also see that quite a bit of the steel materials have continued to accumulate here, in addition to some concrete parts as well on the left-hand side of the screen. And this area here is rapidly filling up, not only with this workshop and some of the welding equipment, but also more of the steel components and the concrete components as well, and some water tanks on the south side. Now this newer staging location continues to get more materials and some trailers. They've also erected some of the fences around this area as well. This is a main transport location for the trucks bringing the dirt from off-site, and also where some of the landscaping plants are stored. As we fly further to the south on this side of the highway, this is a good view of the original material storage location here on the south side. And as you can see, the north end is where the materials are stored now, and the entire south side has been turned into the expansion of the warehouse on wheels, where I believe the empty trailers are brought once they have been unloaded inside the factory and waiting for them to be picked up and then returned to their suppliers. Now on the west side of this section of the west side, you can see more of the earthwork and excavation going on here. This is partially to get dirt to continue the work on the foundation section, you can see at the top of the screen, but also it's beginning to start to level the grade on this part of the site as well. Now as we fly over these hills and valleys in the foreground, this is what this entire section used to look like, and it's remnants of sand and gravel mining. And speaking of gravel, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen quite a bit of this has been spread on the top of the grade, and that is a great sign. That means that the next phase of construction will be beginning fairly soon. Also, where the trucks are driving right now, you can see what appears to be some smaller water detention ponds put in that section, and also what appears to be a road starting to emerge that runs north to south and connects to River Road on the south side. And we're also seeing some more of the preparation of the grade on the left-hand side, and also some geotextile membranes and the gravel mix following behind. So this section is rapidly approaching its nearly finished configuration, at least in this case, and it's sort of triangular in shape. You can also see this new checkpoint on River Road at the middle of the screen as well. As I pan the drone back to the north, this will give you a good view of this East Expansion warehouse on wheels and the material storage just to the north. And also on the left-hand side of the screen is where you can see that excavation work underway. So let's prepare to go back over the highway and take a look at the activity over on the main site today. Here at the south end of the main site, you can see how it is continuing to transform as they prepare that large ground section for a future foundation to expand the length of the building. Now we're flying over the materials staged here on the south side of the cyber pond. Not a lot of changes here, but here in the area where you can see the utility trucks, a little bit higher up, there's a new fence being put in around where the underground a horizontal drilled pipe is located, and we'll get a closer look at that in a little bit. Here at the bottom of the screen, you can see the steel corrugated pipes that are being put in as a diversion of the original site around where the foundation will be. And then all of this section of dirt here has now been filled back in and cleared and leveled. You can see where that corrugated pipe will eventually have its connection right at the bottom of the screen. You also see where crews are changing the location and putting in a new bypass for the blue water pipe here. Also, quite a bit of materials on the east side of stamping. This continues to be parts for the AIDA stamping press, which is very different from the Idra Giga press, so please don't confuse the two. This is a stamping and metal forming device. You can also see there are a lot of deliveries here on the south side of the building, up near where these two central open doors are where stamping 2 is, and that's where the AIDA stamping presses are being installed. You can also see that more of the robotic assemblers are arriving in these two red trucks, one of which is in view here, and then there's another one right to the right of this truck, and you'll see that as I come around. But there's quite a bit of these robotic assemblers in this kind of a silver cover, and this truck here, and then the one on the right hand side of the screen is just filled with these. And this continues what we've been seeing over the last week with a lot more of the robotic assemblers arriving. This is great news for Cybertruck fans, is that this is part of the production line to manufacture the Cybertruck, which is outstanding. Here's a closer view of them unloading one of these robotic assemblers. If you take a look at the size of the workers and that forklift, this gives you a good idea of how large these particular robots are. So another exciting delivery here at the south end of Giga Texas. So let's pull back a little bit, and I'll pan the drone a little bit more to the left just so you get a sense of all of the equipment, the crates, and other materials that have been delivered here on the south end. Some of which going into stamping 2, and a lot of it going up into the third floor of General Assembly. In fact, that's what you're seeing here with the crane and this temporary platform. And I'm not exactly sure what these red and white items are. I'll try to zoom in to get a better view. But if you know what these are, please let me know in the comments of the video. I'd very much appreciate it. Panning further to the west, you can see quite a bit of Model Ys being lined up here. This is for the end-of-line employees that will pick up the vehicles. They will drive them over to the east side for the new car staging and transportation lot. You can also see in the distance here that temporary lot is overflowed with Model Ys as well, and many of them are getting supercharged on this side of the building. So I'm going to bring the drone up higher, get to the south side, looking to the north to give you a good overall view of how the south end continues to transform. All of the concrete has now been removed. Most of the pipes have been relocated and bypassing around where that foundation will be. And some of the other utility work is underway to allow that construction to begin. And hopefully we'll see that by the end of this month. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier, and I will show you here a little bit closer, is at the bottom of the screen. You can see those two trenches. Looks like the crews are putting that orange fence around this particular section, and there's also some other equipment in and around here. Also, on the upper left-hand side of the screen, you'll see in just a second as I zoom back out, the horizontal drilling machine is still here at Giga Texas. And that suggests that we may see more horizontal drilling, maybe where these two trenches are located and the workers are putting the fence. But that yellow device here right in the middle of the screen is that horizontal drill. And the fact that it remains here suggests that we will see future use. As we continue to work towards the north, this is a good view of the south end as it continues to transform. Also, a lot of the material here on the east side of the stamping machine section is just quite a bit of machinery is being delivered and installed inside. And so again, I would say that this is an outstanding sign, especially for those of you who are fans of the Cybertruck waiting for production. All of this equipment is instrumental and essential for that production. Here you can see the temporary parking lot and also some of the staging. There's many trailers as well, and then there's two milling machines waiting for installation near those three gray trailers. I'll bring the drone back over onto just the side of the building, give you a top-down view of some of the activity here on this platform. That's loading materials up to the second floor of Body in White. And we were able to see a couple of videos ago through the windows that there's quite a bit of those robotic assemblers being stored and installed in that section as well. On the roof of the Body in White, the installation of the HVAC ducting and this open section of the roof with grading materials continues. And you can see that it's starting to have a much more finished appearance. So once they finish with the opening of the roof, which is coming along pretty quickly. We'll see the top parts of these vents installed, and then this installation will be complete. So let's reposition the drone over to the west side of the General Assembly, and we'll see what's going on over there today. Here we see resumed activity at the west main entrance. We'll start with the landscape section on the left-hand side of the screen. It looks like some excavation work on that asphalt parking lot is underway as they get ready to reconfigure this particular section. And then over here where the concrete has been removed in front of the west main doors, it looks like continued work with some trenching closest to the road, and then they're also doing some grade work near the main doors as well, as you can see with that darker color, the ground that's being currently flattened down by that device. But anyway, quite a bit of work here, so hopefully we'll start seeing some construction soon so we get an idea what that's going to look like. Now here's an interesting development that I want to show you, and I've talked to you about this before, where they've removed all the asphalt and reconfigured this section and installed all of this concrete, and on the north end they're continuing to prepare for the concrete. What these crews are doing next to this blue and white crane, I believe, are getting ready to start removing those temporary wall panels, which will allow the continued expansion of the receiving docks on this side of the building. Now those panels were installed originally when the building was first constructed, and they knew that for future construction they would remove those. And then here is where the crews are preparing to put some forms and rebar to continue the expansion of the concrete apron in this section, and there's a little bit of concrete demolition underway to help facilitate that. So let's fly up onto the roof and take a look at some of the activity here on the northwest corner, where the HVAC ducts are emitting quite a bit of steam and vapor right now. And then on the right hand side you can see with that covered cooling enclosure, it looks like that last one is almost completed, which is another sign of progress. So I keep monitoring this just to see when this will be finished, and it looks like we still have a little bit of time to go, but they are continuing to work on that. So let's reposition the drone on the north side and take a look at some of the activity up here. And one of the first things I'm going to show you is in the middle of the screen next to the sidewalk and where the curbs have been installed. The darker asphalt was just paved on Saturday, so they've finished this section. You can see the nice new painted marks, and this helps to finish off this construction site where we saw quite a bit of plumbing, the sidewalk, and the curbs being installed. Now as we continue towards the northeast corner of the casting machine structure, I'll give you a good view here of some of the test castings, and also it looks like 5 more Model Y bodies. There's also that red device is a mount that they use for the bodies. Now what I just showed you with that zooming in is I don't think that these are 4680 variants because they have floors, so it looks like there's some continued testing going on with these bodies. And also some interesting deliveries here today. The truck that's backing up looks like it has some sort of a racking system inside. It's really hard to tell for sure what it is that they are delivering. But this is fresh on the heels of all of the Idra Gigapress deliveries that happened late last week and into the weekend. And almost all of those are inside the structure now. As I continue to move the drone a little bit to the south and sort of pirouette around, this gives you a good idea of the castings that have been completed and are being stockpiled on the east side of the casting machine structure. And it just shows that they are continuing with the castings at a pretty high rate to try to keep up with the ramping production, which is noticeable today. So here's a good view of the intersection that continues to get some sort of rework, and you can see what looks like to be forms for curbs. So they're going to keep these diamond edges to the two parking lots, and it looks like most of the underground conduit work has been completed. There's also some more form work and rebar for more concrete here in the middle of the screen, and then up by the wall it looks like more work preparing to get the receiving door apron ready for concrete. And the same thing here. The one on the left is almost ready for concrete. The one on the right still has some extensive underground plumbing work to do before it's ready for concrete. Now as I pull back, here's something that's new. Notice that the superchargers appear to be at least somewhat in operation, as about 4 Model Ys are getting charged. Also note the Model Ys driving by. These are the ones that we saw on the south end getting ready to drive over to this portion of the factory. And this smaller parking lot is used for vehicle testing and other pre-delivery work that once they are completed, then they move them over here to the new car staging and transportation lot, where you see it quite active today. Many transport trucks are busy picking up Model Ys today at a pretty high level, and we also saw earlier in the video more of these transport trucks queued up just to the west of the central highway. But this gives you a good idea of the production pace, and from what we've seen, I would say that the ramp is continuing to increase beyond what we saw in December, which is a really great sign. This is the warehouse on wheels on the east side. This is where most of the trailers arrive that are filled with items necessary for production of the Model Ys. Temporarily stored here until needed. Yard trucks will move them over to the factory, unloaded, and then the empty ones will go across the highway to that warehouse on wheels west expansion. This is the southeast portion of this part of the construction site. You can see many of those concrete segments that were cut up from the south end still stored here. This is a new clearing location, and you can see some of the yellow equipment, which are light poles. So it looks like they're continuing to expand here. More of the concrete segments at the bottom of the screen, more of the trailers used as offices for the construction companies responsible for Giga Texas. And then here is something very interesting I want to show you. And I mentioned it in the intro. You can see all of these crates. They're being kind of broken up and used or put into these vehicles for recycling. But you can also see what appears to be battery packs in some of them. And this is a close-up view of a few of them. And I'm not sure if these are 2170 or 4680 battery packs. There's some more at the bottom of the screen, just at the very bottom of the screen. So it's hard to tell for sure. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments as well. The battery cathode plant, quite a bit of activity on both sides. Here we're on the east side. You can see the materials that are starting to stockpile in this new staging location. Also, inside this open door or open wall section, you can see more crates have been installed as well. And then these white items are sort of mounts and racking systems for some of the equipment that will be going inside. And we can also see more of the equipment and trailers being stored here, and this dirt area continues to have the grade raised as they are reclaiming this section and replacing the water detention pond with a flattened area, and it looks like they continue to work to the south. So it looks like they're going to be widening the overall section and area around the battery cathode plant. This is where they're getting some of that dirt, and in addition to providing dirt for that new clearing, they're also lowering the grade here and flattening it out, as you can see, up to the north. And this large hill is about all that remains of the original altitude of the land, and we'll continue to see that removed to lower this down, probably for future construction. Also, more of the steel materials and other materials that are being stored up here that are being used for the west side new building. And then I'm going to give you a good close-up view inside this part of the battery cathode building, where you see a lot more of those white coated iron pipes and other construction going on that third floor. On this side of the building, we can see that temporary storage on the left, the blue water pipe trench going down the middle and extending to the south. More of the steel materials here on the west side around this tree that they apparently are trying to save, which is pretty neat. And then you can see the structure is really growing large now. In addition to 3 rows of main columns and bridge crane rails and a north end structure for the wall, we can also see many of the roof beams have been installed, and we can also see the cantilever of the roof as well. So it's sloping from the west to the east. Also, you can see these sort of truss-like structures. These turned out to be columns that are being mounted to support what appears to be some pretty substantial railing systems for a bridge crane. And that makes sense because right to the south here is that heavily reinforced pier section, very densely packed, with these large foundations or footings being put around that section. So it suggests that they need this very strong or very heavy lift bridge crane for the items that will be installed on that section of the building. As we continue to move around this construction site, we can see the crane still is idle here on the southwest corner. A lot more of the steel materials continue to be delivered and temporarily stored here on the south end before they are moved and installed on the building. And it looks like quite a bit more of those triangular shaped columns have been assembled on the left-hand side of the screen. And then we can also see that there's active concrete being poured in some of these newer footings, especially on this east side. And as we've talked about before, as soon as these get cured, which will be several days, the steel assembly is following right behind that. And then here's a good closer view of this densely packed pier section and then the footings that are being installed on either side, now continuing to move towards the south beyond those piers. And this is another good view of the steel structure for the new building and then the steel structure just to the west side of the battery cathode plant. So let's take a closer look from this angle at this particular portion of the new structure just to get an idea of how this is looking here. And if you can see some of the workers, that just give you an idea of the scale. This smaller steel structure is continuing to get more of these iron pipes with the white coating installed. And as one of several of my Patreons suggested, these pipes on the steel structure right now are not being fully installed. They're leaving them loose so that they can put all of the pipes on and then do the connections a lot more easily before they are all finally and firmly affixed to that structure. So here's a higher altitude view of not only the west foundations and the structure that's coming up, but I also wanted to give you a good view of the entire battery cathode construction site today, and also views up to the north where additional construction will be beginning sometime early this year on at least one more logistics yard. So let's get ready to move over to the electrical switch yard and take a look at the progress over there today. This is a good view from the east looking to the west across the electrical switch yard, the water detention pond, and then also here the 4 new metal poles that have been installed. And you can see them, they're slightly more shiny than the duller gray ones, but all 4 have now been assembled and installed, and this will be necessary to connect the high tension wires from the existing power lines to the electrical switch yard. And then this is a good view of some of the activity and continued assembly of the steel. Also, we'll see some work on the cable tray trenches. As you can see here in the middle of the screen, the third of eventually 4 of the east to west cable trays is now getting concrete installed. So continues to progress, and we'll see one more at the end of this trench installed, and then that will complete the installation of the cable trays and the trenches for it. So here's a good view of some of the concrete pour that is going on inside this east to west section of the cable tray trench. Now, I've had a couple of people ask, why do we need a power station if there's going to be solar panels on the roof? And I think that that's sort of a misunderstanding of how solar panels, the eventual megapack, and also the work to stabilize the grid for Texas will function. Essentially, the solar panels will work in conjunction with the megapacks. The megapack system will help to stabilize the grid, and it needs to have the electrical substation or switch yard here to not only be able to have that connection, but also to have power come into Giga Texas as well. So it's quite a system, and I would suggest those asking those questions take a look at megapacks and how the Tesla energy system works. But that'll wrap it up for today. This is a good higher altitude view from the northeast looking to the southwest over the main building. I hope that you enjoyed the tour around the site, all of the images and video and the narration. And as always, thank you very much for your support and for watching. Have a great rest of the week.